I think I can say without fear of being contradicted that I have never read a single paper that shows that orthodontics is of significant long-term benefit to the patients. Something in the way we bring ourselves up, our children up, is messing up facial growth. I mean, I would imagine there's not, well, if any, I'd be surprised with a perfect occlusion in this room. And by the automatic link, one would say probably not many of you with perfect faces either. But of course, the one comment is purely abstract, the other is personal. So again, just remember that faces are such personal things. It amazed me how important, but how personal this is, the whole concept of facial appearance. Even now, as I'm talking to you, I know it's a very emotive concept. Our face is not just our face, it's us. It's personal. I can tell a fond mother, I'm afraid your daughter has a very serious malocclusion, and the mother will nod in sympathy. But I say, I'm sorry to tell you your daughter has a very ugly face. It's just not acceptable. Well, the mere fact that you laughed at that should tell you yourself about the emotive content that faces carry. Why? This was a patient of mine that taught me a lesson, a bizarre lesson. Anyway, she had this strange swallowing pattern, and her face then changed growth like that. Now, I knew I was to blame because I'd started treatment on her with a bite-raising appliance. I was, what, age 22, 3, fresh out of school, didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, I knew I caused that. So I took her back to my university, and they all patted me on the back, said, don't worry about it, John, it's just she's got an adverse growth pattern. Now, I knew I caused that adverse growth pattern. They didn't recognize it as such. Her father, sad as it was a GP, and he was as concerned as I was. And she had every test in the book, and nobody could find anything was wrong with her growth at all. I could see her growth pattern was wrong. But this case was one of those which really founded a lot of my current beliefs, because I then compared the outline of her mandible before and after the treatment. It wasn't treatment really, it was aborted almost as soon as it started. But you'll notice that during the age of 10 and 14, when she was at her maximum growth, her horizontal ramus had shortened by 1/3. It was that one case that taught me more about the bony change than any other case I've ever seen. I'm absolutely certain that would happen to any patient anywhere in those circumstances. But she just hung her mouth open wide and the mandible shrunk, partly to maintain the pharyngeal airway. But that is endemic, that ability is endemic between every child. Every child has the ability for their mandible to change like that. And of course you can imagine what that does to the crowding of the teeth and to everything. It destroys the face for one, but gives them the most horrendous malocclusion for two. And I often think it was the worst tragedy for that poor girl, who I'm sure is still alive, and I feel so guilty about it. But the one benefit has been that it taught me more about orthodontic treatment than any other single incidence in my whole career. That one case, and in a sense, it's partly that one case that has driven me all my life. Maybe it was the guilt that I felt from having done that drove me to feel I must prevent it happening. It also gave me the feeling of power. I said, if that much can go wrong, we must have the power to make that much go right. All we need to do is to work out how to do it. And it probably did more than any other single thing to prompt me to look for the ways of changing growth. I could see it was possible. I couldn't believe that it could be that possible. And yet, I had done that harm, and I felt I needed to cleanse my soul, perhaps is the right word to use. I think all malocclusion is the result of vertical growth, and you won't correct a malocclusion unless you correct the vertical growth. This, again, that's quite a nasty malocclusion. I mean, not for anyone doing bioblock orthotropics, it's dead straightforward. But for someone trying to correct that with conventional treatment techniques, they would get the teeth straight, but they'd have a real job to improve that face. I mean, the chin's noticeably back and down, isn't it? And that was her, 20 years later. And it's the degree of change that you can create just by encouraging that vertical growth. And of course, when you take everything forward, there isn't this tendency to relapse. I never retain cases. I mean, most orthodontists moan away at me about the trouble they have putting on fixed retainers and then, of course, maintaining them. Some people are spending half their practice just refitting the retainers and it's such an artificial solution, if you want to call it a solution at all. But yeah, and remember that I may not retain the teeth, but I do monitor and modulate the posture, because I know that if at the end of treatment they hang their mouths open, what's going to happen? Right. But then, is that my fault? Do I have to retain it? I just need to tell them the truth, don't I? I tell them, I've taught them, by the time they've done 2 years at night, all of them can keep their mouths closed with no real problem at all. And so I say, it's up to you from here on. It's not me that's saddled with the responsibility for the rest of their life. And when I was doing conventional orthodontics, I used to have mums come back to me and say, you did a lovely job, Dr. Mew, but we're worried about, look, that little bottom tooth is crossing over the next tooth. And lo and behold, they got low and sides of crowding. So I say, well, terribly sorry, Mrs. Smith, I'll treat you again, no charge. And then they come back 3 or 4 years later and say, you were so kind to us. When it did go that little bit wrong, you did it for immediately. But you know, I'm sorry to say, it's getting a little bit crooked again. And of course, by now, the daughter or son is probably at university and is looking at me very sourly, and the last thing they want to do is go back into train tracks. So I'm probably off the hook. But that is what used to happen to me when I was trying to use fixed appliances. It never happens now. When things go wrong, the patients come back and apologize to me. They say, you did this lovely job, and now I'm afraid she's still leaving her mouth open. And she's ruined it, looking angrily at the daughter or the son. They don't blame me. Why should they? But you get everybody off your back if you adopt this policy. Taking the whole face forward makes such a difference to the actual aesthetics of the face. And you can see the girl at the left there was a pretty girl, nothing unattractive about her face. But the girl on the right is an especially pretty girl. But just because the maxilla's come forward, that's the difference it makes. Just remember that. The maxilla is so important. Anyone who doubts that the maxilla is the most important bone should look at that girl. Now, I should ask you not just to look at her face, but to judge her personality. What sort of a girl is she? Is she outgoing? Would she be good fun at a party? Perhaps not. Well, now let me show you another girl. Now, that girl, would she be more fun at a party? Is she more outgoing? She's a different type of girl, isn't she? You can probably guess where we're coming from. A little magic, perhaps. Right, the only difference is the position of the maxilla. Just remember that, because it is so much more important than most people think.